Imagine you are standing on a battlefield. The ground beneath your feet is cold. The air smells of iron and smoke. 10,000 men stand across from you, armed, trained, and hungry for blood. Your general turns to you the night before and gives you one rule. Not a rule about your sword, not a rule about your shield or your formation or your battle cry. One rule about what you are forbidden to do with your own body. And across every major warrior civilization in human history, the Spartans, the Aztecs, the Shaolin, the Samurai, the Roman legions, the Zulu warriors, that one rule was the same. No ejaculation before battle. This was the fundamental law. The question is not whether they believed it worked. The question is, why did it work? And what does modern biology say about what was actually happening inside those men's bodies? Stay with me, because the answer reaches far deeper than willpower or superstition. It reaches into your testosterone, your nervous system, your aggression chemistry, and the ancient biological architecture of what it means to be a man prepared for the highest possible performance. There is a pattern in history so consistent, so geographically widespread, and so deliberately enforced across independent civilizations that it cannot be dismissed as coincidence or cultural mythology. Warrior cultures did not stumble upon sexual abstinence before combat by accident. They observed it empirically across generations. They watched men who violated the rule perform below their capacity. They watched men who honored it transform into something that seemed to exceed ordinary human limits. And they codified it into law. This was not religion first. This was results first. The sacred framework came after the observable outcome, and the observable outcome was undeniable. The Spartan warrior code, one of the most ruthlessly practical military systems ever designed, included strict sexual discipline in the weeks leading up to engagement. Spartan commanders were not spiritual men in the conventional sense. They were scientists of human performance operating without laboratories. What they understood through centuries of observation, modern endocrinology is only now beginning to measure with precision. The Roman legions at their peak, the armies that conquered the known world, operated under explicit rules of sexual restraint during campaign periods. Roman military physicians documented the connection between sexual expenditure and physical depletion. They called it vis vitalis, vital force, and they considered its conservation a military asset as strategic as weapons or supply lines. You might be thinking, okay, ancient warriors believed a lot of things that turned out to be wrong. Flat earth, evil spirits, sacrificing animals for rain. So why should this be different? Stay locked in, because what I am about to show you is that this particular belief maps almost perfectly onto what modern science has discovered about testosterone, aggression hormones, and neurological readiness. This is where it gets extraordinary. Let us talk about what actually happens inside a man's body in the days following ejaculation, because this is the foundation of everything the ancient warriors understood intuitively. When a man ejaculates, the body triggers a significant hormonal cascade. Prolactin surges, the same hormone that rises in women after childbirth to suppress further sexual drive. Dopamine receptors temporarily downregulate. This reduces the urge for immediate reward. Serotonin spikes in a way that produces calm, satisfaction, and reduced motivation. And critically, testosterone, while not immediately depleted, undergoes a complex shift in its receptor sensitivity and free availability in the bloodstream. This is called the post-ejaculatory refractory state. And while it varies in duration between men, research consistently shows that its effects extend far beyond the immediate hours following release. And while it varies in duration between men, research consistently shows that its effects extend far beyond the immediate hours following release. A landmark study published in the World Journal of Urology found that testosterone levels peak measurably around day 7 of abstinence, rising to levels significantly above baseline before gradually stabilizing. This 7-day surge was so consistent across subjects that researchers noted it as a reliable biological pattern rather than individual variation. For a warrior preparing for combat, this window represented something extraordinarily valuable. Elevated testosterone does not just affect muscle strength, though it does that powerfully. It elevates aggression threshold, reduces fear response, sharpens competitive drive, accelerates reaction time, increases pain tolerance, and amplifies the willingness to engage rather than retreat. In the language of modern neuroscience, the retained warrior was operating with a biochemically primed nervous system optimized for exactly what battle demands. Now I want to go deeper. because testosterone is only one layer. What the ancient warriors were also preserving, without knowing its name, was something neuroscientists now call norepinephrine dominance. And this is the part that explains why retained men move differently, speak differently, and occupy space differently than men who are constantly draining themselves. Keep watching. Norepinephrine is the brain's primary alertness and aggression neurotransmitter. It is the chemical signature of the predator state, heightened sensory awareness, narrowed focus, elevated physical readiness, and the neurological architecture of dominance rather than submission. Chronic ejaculation, particularly compulsive ejaculation driven by pornography and habituation, keeps the nervous system cycling through artificial dopamine peaks, followed by norepinephrine crashes. The man lives in a biochemical yo-yo that never allows his alertness systems to fully charge and stabilize. Retention breaks this cycle. As the days accumulate, norepinephrine levels stabilize at a higher baseline. The man becomes, and this is the word reported most consistently by practitioners and observed most consistently by those around them, present. Not agitated, not aggressive in an uncontrolled way, but radiantly, quietly, powerfully present in a way that other people feel before they can explain it. The samurai of feudal Japan had a concept called zanshin, a state of total present moment awareness, relaxed yet supremely ready, that the greatest warriors cultivated as their permanent mode of being. Modern practitioners of semen retention describe arriving at states remarkably similar to zanshin, not through decades of sword training, but through the simple act of conservation and internal cultivation. This is not metaphor. The neurological mechanism is real. The ancient warriors were engineering this state deliberately, through empirical observation, centuries before neuroscience gave it a name. Now let us travel to the Aztec warrior tradition, because this civilization offers one of the most explicit and documented examples of pre-combat sexual discipline in human history. Aztec warriors preparing for the sacred flower wars, ritualized combats designed to capture rather than kill, underwent periods of strict celibacy enforced at the institutional level. Violation was not treated as personal weakness. It was treated as a form of military sabotage. The belief was explicit that the warrior who expended his vital force before battle had given his power to his enemy before the first blow was struck. That framing is remarkable. They were not merely saying the retained warrior was stronger. They were saying the drained warrior had already lost something that could not be reclaimed in the hours before combat. The deficit was real, measurable in outcome, and treated as a form of strategic betrayal. Across the Pacific, the Shaolin monks, whose warrior tradition produced some of the most physically extraordinary human beings ever documented, built their entire physical and spiritual practice around the preservation and cultivation of what they called Jing Qi, the fundamental generative essence. Their combat training and their conservation practice were not separate disciplines. They were understood as two expressions of the same principle. You cannot pour from an empty vessel, and the vessel was the body itself. Here is something I want you to sit with for a moment, because this cuts through all the history and biology and lands somewhere personal. Every one of these warrior traditions was built around the same observation, that the man who controls his most primal drive controls everything else. And every civilization that forgot this, that allowed its men to become soft, distracted, and endlessly self-indulgent, declined. Every single one. That is not coincidence. That is a pattern written in the ruins of empires. The Zulu warriors of southern Africa, among the most ferocious and tactically sophisticated fighters of the 19th century, who inflicted one of the most devastating defeats on the British Empire at the Battle of Isandlwana, operated under strict sexual codes enforced by their military structure. Young warriors in the Amabuto regimental system were forbidden from marriage and sexual activity until their regiment had proven itself in battle and received permission from the king. This was not cruelty. This was the deliberate cultivation of accumulated drive, aggression, and unified masculine energy across an entire fighting force. When you multiply the individual hormonal and neurological effects of retention across thousands of men operating as a single unit, each carrying that charged, primed, focused energy, the collective effect on battlefield psychology becomes almost incomprehensible in its power. The British soldiers who faced the Zulu at Isandlwana were armed with rifles, the Zulu charged with spears, and the Zulu won. Military historians still debate the tactical factors, but the energetic factor, the psychological and physiological state of the warriors, is rarely examined. It deserves to be. Now bring this out of history and into your life, because the battlefield has changed its form, but the biology has not changed at all. You are not fighting with spears, but you are fighting every single day. You are competing for opportunities, for respect, for the outcomes that matter to you, for the life you are trying to build. You are making decisions under pressure, performing in front of others, navigating conflict, asserting yourself in spaces where other men are also competing. And your hormonal state, your neurological readiness, your baseline energy, your willingness to engage rather than retreat, all of it is being shaped, moment by choices you make in private. The ancient warrior did not separate his private discipline from his public performance. He understood they were the same thing. The man who could master himself in solitude was the man who could master the chaos of battle. Self-conquest preceded every other form of conquest. This is not a metaphor from the past. This is a principle that applies with full force to your life right now, today, in whatever arena you are fighting in. I want to speak directly to you now. Not as a history lesson, not as a biology lecture, as one man to another. Because I think you already know what I am about to say. There is a version of you that is fully awake, fully charged, fully present. The version that walks into rooms and shifts the energy. The version that thinks clearly under pressure. The version that acts from strength rather than reacting from depletion. The version that other people instinctively respect before you have said a single word. That version is not a fantasy. That version is your biological default when the conditions are right. The ancient warriors knew this. They built entire civilizations around protecting it in their fighting men because they understood that the inner state of a warrior determined the outer outcome of a battle. You have the same biology as those warriors, the same hormonal architecture, the same neurological hardware, the same capacity for the charged, focused, powerful state that made them legendary. The only question is whether you are willing to protect what they protected, whether you are willing to honor what they honored, whether you are ready to stop treating your most fundamental energy as something to be spent carelessly and start treating it as the strategic asset that every great warrior culture understood it to be. The battlefield is waiting, and it is asking the same question those ancient generals asked of their men the night before everything was decided. Are you going into this full or empty? If this stirred something in you today, if you felt something shift while watching this, please hit that like button right now. It is the simplest way to tell me this work matters and to help this reach the men who need it most. Share this video with someone in your life who is fighting his own battles, someone who is capable of so much more than he is currently living. One share from you could be the thing that changes everything for him. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep going deeper. Every video here is built for the man who is done with shallow answers and ready for the truth that actually transforms. And thank you, genuinely from the heart, for showing up for yourself today, for seeking, for being the kind of man who wants to understand rather than just react. That quality alone is rare, and it is the beginning of everything. Stay strong, stay disciplined. See you in the next one.